if you look at where job creation comes from in, across many economies, and in particular also the US, you see that it's a very small fraction, about 5 to 7% of the firms that start up that create all the jobs. So even though there are millions of small businesses in the US, most of them never create jobs, right? But what you see is that those 5 to 7% of the small businesses that actually start growing, they are the ones who immediately start adding people to the payroll, and they seem to be on a completely different trajectory. So I usually like to call them the transformational entrepreneurs compared to the just subsistent entrepreneurs. And in my research, what I try to understand is how does finance play into financing those transformational entrepreneurs, right? Because one big factor that we see that, let's say, divides entrepreneurs in emerging markets from the West, the US and Europe, is that if you look at the firm size distribution, let's say in the US, right, you see that it's relatively uniform. That means, there are many tiny firms, there are medium-sized firms, and there are very large firms. And there's a very nice, if you want, progression or transition from small to medium to large, right? Now you compare this to, let's say, India or emerging markets, you see that it looks very different. The distribution is very bimodal. So you have tons of tiny firms, but they stay tiny, and they never actually employ many people. Maybe they employ some family members, but that's it. And then you have a few really big firms, and they are big, but they also don't grow that much. Right? And so what in our research, or in my research, what I've done, I've tried to understand how does, in particular, venture capital facilitate this transition. And we've seen in a lot of work that actually venture capital money is very important to facilitate this transition. Now, it's important to understand VCs don't create entrepreneurs. And so sometimes when you see government policies, let's say in Europe or in Germany, where I'm from, right, where they try to kind of just create a venture capital industry when there are no entrepreneurs, that doesn't help very much, right? But it looks like VCs are very important in helping those small firms to transition, to become transformational, and then to become big. And that's because they provide risk capital, but they also provide a lot of other value-added services. Right? They help entrepreneurs to become more professional, etc.